and welcome to The Aware Show. I am Lisa Garr, and so happy to be with you today because we get to talk about things that always inspire positive growth and change. So, let me ask you this question. Oh, by the way, if you're listening on the radio, you can always go to our podcast if you want to listen to this show on demand. Wherever you love listening to podcasts, just look up The Aware Show and you will find us there. All right, so what if I said to you, you have innate soul powers for self-healing? In other words, you can take charge of your own health. I know you've heard that before, but my guest today, a distinguished best-selling author, Joseph Selbie, makes this authoritative statement, and he says, no disease is incurable. Extraordinarily rapid, miraculous healing is possible. And he explains this in his book, The Physics of Miraculous Healing, how emotion, mind, and spirit enable unlimited self-healing. Fascinating topic. Welcome to the show, Joseph.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So, first of all, I love that you make this so simple for people that maybe immersed in physics at all. I just want to find out, where did we go wrong? Like, how did we get under the assumption that we cannot miraculously heal in the first place?
Well, I think most of that conviction that extraordinarily rapid healing is impossible comes to us from the modern medical model of how the human body works. And it's pretty much a picture of a molecular machine. It's an amazing machine. It is an extraordinarily adaptive machine, but it stays within the rules of the behaviors of molecules. And that model has no way of explaining rapid change. And it has no way of explaining how people can heal from illnesses that modern medicine has considered to be terminal. You know, they consider them to be terminal because people who have it and have to deal with that condition do 99.99 times out of 100, they actually die. But there's that tiny fraction that don't die. And they really have no answer for that because it shouldn't happen according to their rules.
Right.
So that is a very powerful conditioning that comes through to all of us. You know, it's in popular science, it's in the whole, just about everywhere you experience anybody talking about health, it's all based on that model. And so it's very easy to buy into that.
True. But you hear about it all the time. I think you hear about the people that miraculously heal more than the large percentage of the people that don't make it. And I know that, I mean, you say somehow that physics can explain this extraordinary, just rapid healing. How does physics explain that?
Well, the principles on which modern medicine is based are in turn based on what's known as classical physics. So classical physics is, put really simply, a sort of matter-centered view of reality. And in classical physics, you've got atoms, which turn into molecules, and you have energies that interact with atoms and molecules, and they are fixed. The molecules never change, the atoms never change. But that stopped being the predominant model in physics over 100 years ago. And modern medicine didn't adapt to it. It didn't integrate the new findings in physics, starting with Einstein, whose theory of special relativity basically tells us that there is no such thing as matter. Matter is energy in another form, in a stable pattern, if you will. But matter, as we conceive of it, like little itty bitty tiny bits of matter in an atom, just don't exist. It's all energy. And then when we get to quantum physics, which is famous for its weirdness, right? Quantum physics says not only is matter energy, but it has two behaviors. That same energy can behave as matter, being in these stable patterns that create atoms, or it can behave like waves of energy that are formless.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which suggests that some or all of the atoms and molecules in our bodies could behave like formless waves of energy.
And the question becomes, how do we impact that formless energy to something that has an intention behind it or a will? How do we connect our will to that formless energy?
Well, there's another step sort of between the best answer to your question and just the fact that we are essentially energy. And that is that the body is holographic. Pretty much everyone by now has heard of this notion that we live in a holographic universe.
Right.
And, we have, if nothing else, we have Matrix to tell us that somebody is living in a holographic simulation. But all of that sort of popularization of the concept all come from M theory, which is sort of the leading edge of physics today.
M theory.
A,
Okay.
a basic tenet of M theory is that we essentially exist in two realities. We exist in the physical world that we're familiar with, that we perceive through the senses, but we also exist in a pure energy world. And that in that pure energy world is the actual information, the actual template that holographically projects the physical universe into being.
Hmm.
And it's a continuous process.
So you said that that's the step between how do we take our intentions and impact this energetic world we live in. And could we also impact the energetic world of others? Like if we have a prayer for a child or a parent or a loved one?
Definitely. We're constantly affected. We don't necessarily notice it because we're looking for maybe overt physical changes.
Evidence, yes, yes.
But in fact, as you and I are having this conversation, our energy essence is interacting. You're responding to what I say, I'm responding to what you say. You're responding to what I'm feeling. I'm responding to what you're feeling.
Well, I mean, the whole art of Zoom is energy. I mean, what we're
Yeah,
doing
it is.
virtually on video is all signals that are being sent energetically, right?
We're primarily interacting at that level, not through the marvels of modern technology, but through this seamless energy realm, which we're always in. As I like to put it, we always have one foot on Earth and one foot in this energy realm.
Right. The broadcast signal is energy, essentially.
And we can't exist without that energy realm. We can't exist without
Hmm.
essentially our subtle energy body that exists in that realm. So
Hmm.
this is where the connection gets made, is that our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions have an immediate and powerful effect on subtle energy. It is much more mutable It's much more changeable. If you could see it happening, you would see emotions reverberating through a person, and you would
Yes.
see physical changes as a result.
Well, okay, so I'm going to go back to the broadcast signal for a second because the broadcast signal is an intentional signal that is sending this show through a radio wave to a transmitter on a car or wherever the radio signal lands. That's intentional. It's an intentional frequency.
Right.
So, and there's a number associated. So, what if we make our intention that specific, a frequency? Does it need to be that specific, a frequency to heal or a frequency to send energy of support to someone?
Well, I would take a step back in order to answer that question. And the step back is that we are constantly, unintentionally creating the bodies that we have.
That is a good point.
We're constantly, and therefore unintentionally also, affecting others around us with whatever our emotional signal is, whatever our deeply held beliefs are. We're shaping not only our own body, but the lives of people around us, and even if we're strong enough to affect the literal world around us.
Right.
So that is the given. So intentionality enters the picture when we say, I get it. I'm doing that all the time. So let me be much more deliberate about what that signal is that
Right.
I'm going to broadcast and gets picked up and manifesting as my physical body.
It's interesting. So if you like listen to the news and you listen to the fear in the news and the amount of divisiveness that's reported on and the anger and the meanness that's reported on and even the shootings, all of it, that's an unintentional signal, unconscious signal that we're sending all the time, according to what you
Yes.
just said.
Yes. And it shapes people. There are actually experiments have been done that show you can track the negative consequences of powerfully bad news as it sweeps through populations of people.
It shapes a country.
Yeah.
It does. So imagine the positive effects if you're trying to reach someone. I don't know, I find that really interesting. I just want to pause on that for a second because while all of the RNC, DNC, everything was going on here in the US, I was in a small country in France and in these tiny villages where there was barely any signal, of course not. And, 1800s, early century fromageries were created. There was no energy whatsoever of politics in the US. None, not even a thought. And life went on, and it was beautiful and simple. And yet you come back through the airports and back through, as you get closer to the US and you see the news all over the place and you see all of the tension and the lines get longer and the people get thicker. And it's just really interesting. The difference where I could see that level of chaos coming back to the US. And it's just fascinating when you go to these remote villages that they're just not aware of it even. So going back to sending signals, back to sending intentional signals, can you describe how physics in like a scientific mechanism uses those intentional signals?
Well, the primary way that we send intentional or unintentional signals is through our innate soul abilities of our emotions, our beliefs, and a connection or lack of connection to spirit. So if you want to use the signal analogy, we set our emotional radio at a certain frequency, and it's constantly sending that out. Then that constancy affects us both in how we feel, and it affects every atom and molecule in the physical body and how they manifest. Then it affects everybody around us. There's the old gem of a statement attributed to Gandhi that we need to be the change we want to see in the world, because being the change means we're changing our signal.
Right, of course.
And so not only is that emotional, which is a very powerful aspect of who we are, it's also deeply held beliefs that limit our health, limit our view of possibility around us and in the world. And we're in charge of those. Those are innate soul powers. We can change those signals if we so choose. Not just, okay, I've chosen and now it's all different, but we can choose to become more aware of our own signals and do things that will make our emotions more positive, deliberately more positive, and to make our beliefs more unlimited, and particularly to connect more deeply to the spirit within, to ourself and God within.
By becoming aware, like you said, by just the awareness of this is how that's what you call intelligently guided creation.
Yes. Yes. I mean, we can connect to that. It's, how would I put it? It's bigger than we are. We are a part of the infinite spirit. We are a part of this infinite intelligent consciousness. And so we get to wield a certain amount of that power. And the more aware we become of ourselves, the more we can use that power for our own good and the good of others.
Right.
So we're heirs to that.
Well, it's possible. No, absolutely. You hear these when there's a tragedy that happens, you always hear this standard phrase, sending thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. But if you actually see what that can mean, where you can intentionally send, even with larger groups of people that are intending as well, does it become more powerful?
Oh yes. I'm blessed to be living in a spiritual community, and it's a spiritual community that has other locations all around the world. And I was recently, about 3 years ago, I was in an auto accident. And because I've been in the community for a very long time, lots of people know me. And I literally had thousands of people praying for me all over the world. And I felt it. I could, a lot of how I felt it was I felt completely safe.
Mm,
You know, I felt in a way nurtured at the deepest level. There was nothing to worry about. All was going to be well.
mm.
It was a very moving experience to be
Yep.
prayed for by that many people.
Yes, yes. I've experienced that as well. And that's what you call miraculous. You have in your book stories of miraculous healings, and I'd love it if you could share some of those with us. It's called The Physics of Miraculous Healing. Can you tell us what led up to these miraculous types of healings?
Well, let me share with you a couple of the stories because they are extraordinary, as you would expect. Um, I'll start with a sort of a cautionary tale about the power of our convictions, the power of our beliefs. And the story centers around a man named Mr. Wright, who was in the hospital in the 60s or 70s, I think it was, with lymphoma. And he was very, very ill. He was about gone. He had visible tumors on his body. His lungs were filled with fluid. He had very little energy. But he was kind of an innate optimist as a person. And he discovered this read this article that a chemotherapy treatment was about to be trialed in the very hospital where he was sick. And it was a chemotherapy treatment for lymphoma.
Mm.
And so even though he didn't fit the group of people that they wanted to trial, because essentially he was too far gone, nonetheless, he talked his doctor, Dr. West, into giving him the treatment. So Dr. West gave him an injection of a drug called cribiazin on a Friday afternoon. Dr. West went home, came back on Monday, and Mr. Wright was up, ambulatory, had no fluid in his lungs. All his tumors had vanished. And he checked out of the hospital 2 days later and flew home in his own airplane.
Ah.
But this is where it starts to be a cautionary tale, because Mr. Wright, about a month later, read an article that said cribiazin was completely ineffective.
Oh.
And all the trials were coming up with very poor results. He immediately crashed back into the identical condition. His lungs filled up with fluid, tumors returned, checked himself back into the hospital, pretty much in the same state that he was when he got that very first injection. Well, this fascinated Dr. West because he'd never seen anything like it. And in fact, none of the other patients who had been given cribiazin had any effect. None of them improved.
Hmm.
So he tried something which today would probably be considered unethical, which is that he told Mr. Wright that although it was true that cribiazin was proving to be ineffective, there was a new and improved cribiazin that was coming to the hospital in a few days for a second wave of trials, and that he would administer it to Mr. Wright as soon as it got to the hospital.
Mm.
And Mr. Wright, buoyed up, his spirits, his optimism came up. And when Dr. West did give him the injection, which was just a saline solution,
Mm-hmm.
because there was no extra strength cribiazin, same thing happened. He rallied, the fluid drained out of his lungs, tumors disappeared, energy came back, checked himself out of the hospital, went home.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
one more step,
Okay.
and this is why it's cautionary, especially, is that a month or so later, he had read yet another article about cribiazin, and it said it's absolutely without any help. All trials have been suspended. Crashed again, checked back into the hospital, and died in 2 days.
Oh, you should stop reading.
So the cautionary part of it is what you have belief in.
Mm.
So he had belief in the power of chemotherapy to heal him, but that belief was so powerful that when it appeared there was no drug, there was no chemotherapy that could heal him, he died.
So the belief needs to basically be in yourself and your own innate ability to heal, which
And unlimited, and that there
Oh.
is nothing you can't heal from. So in some ways, modern medicine has done mankind a great service by making them believe that many illnesses are curable.
Yeah, that there's
But then
options.
they've done the opposite as well by making people believe that many illnesses are incurable.
Mm-hmm.
And people who have those illnesses tend to die right within the predicted time frame of death for people who have that disease.
Aha. So it's an interesting experience because belief has always, belief runs pretty much our world. Belief in religions, belief in politics, belief in stories, cultures, everything in our world is based on belief. And it's very strong cultural memes. So there's a belief that once you have a disease, that it has these ramifications in a body. So, like, for example, you have a story in your book about a woman with MS, and MS attacks the nervous system and deadens nerves in the body that you can't regenerate in certain ways. So, I'm so curious about this story because it's sometimes irreversible effects when you start to damage nerves.
Pretty much everyone who comes down with it finds it irreversible. I believe in large measure because they believe it's going to be that way.
Mm,
So, in this story that you alluded to, a woman named Barbara Kumiski came down with multiple sclerosis when she was 16. And 15 years later, when this story is told, um, she had gone up and down, mostly down. She'd almost died a couple of times. And at this point, her parents were about to move her into hospice. There didn't seem to be any way she could live. She had no urinary or bowel control. She was emaciated. Her hands were curled in up against her forearms, her feet similar. And yet, even in this condition, she was clear of mind and strong of heart. And
mhm,
she prayed for people. She came from a strong Christian family, but she prayed for people hours a day.
mm.
And it became her connection to spirit. And she felt that, she was in the flow of the divine as she was doing those prayers. And at the time this story began, or not began, but was told, she heard a voice that said, "Get up and walk."
Wow.
And she did. She took the oxygen mask off, the IV off. She got out of bed unaided, and she walked into the living room of her parents' home from her bedroom and did a ballet move that she hadn't done since she'd had MS. Her feet had returned to normal size and her control over them was the same. Her hands came back to normal. She gained like 30 or 40 pounds
Oh my goodness.
in moments.
Mm. In moments?
Well, really, I mean, by the time she got out of bed, by the time she stood up and got out of bed, all of these things had happened.
Huh.
And she saw her doctor the next day, who had been her physician for all of those 16 years. He
Yeah.
knew her condition intimately. And he said, "You have no MS. You have absolutely no symptoms of MS."
How could she have gained 30 to 40 pounds in moments?
Because, and this is the dynamic that I think it's important for people to understand, is that her subtle energy body changed. The hologram, the template that holographically projects the physical body, it changed. An instant later, physical body changed.
That is, did they videotape it?
No, but there were witnesses. There were many witnesses besides her parents who were there that night.
I mean, my aunt has MS and her mind is still there. It's, at times. And I mean, you would have to see the just a pixel of what is possible in her mind in order for the rest of her body to really get this. I do understand what you're saying is possible. this particular woman you're talking about had that pixel, had the belief
Yeah,
that
powerful belief,
relationship with
powerful
spirit.
connection. Yeah.
Hmm. And she was praying and intending constantly, constantly for wellness, for other people's wellness, for her own wellness. So
Well,
she
apparently
had,
she didn't even pray for her own wellness. She
oh,
just prayed for others. She thought she was going. She had
mm.
no illusions or hopes by that time that she was going to be cured. She just wanted to be, as she put it, a contributing member of the human race.
Is she still alive today?
I'm not sure, but she definitely lived on for many, many decades after that event.
And told her story, I hope.
Yes, yes.
Would be great to see a book by her because there's, a lot I'm sure that goes into it. It's not just one thing. You said earlier that it's got to have belief. There's got to, at the title of your book explains it. It's emotion, mind, and spirit. So could this type of spontaneous healing happen without one of those?
Probably, yes.
Mm.
But I think that you can't, if I were to downplay the importance of emotions for one particular case, it wouldn't mean that that person didn't have emotions. You can't just remove them from the reality of a person. But I think one or the other of those three can predominate as being the most important part of what brought about their cure.
And the important thing is that those three things are what to focus on: emotion, mind, and spirit, to enable unlimited self healing. That's what your title of the book is.
And you have
So,
to build it. I don't want
yeah,
to give anybody the impression that you can pick up my book or any other book and in 3 short lessons be able to miraculously heal from anything.
right.
Because what you're also working against is you created that illness in the first place.
Hmm. Well, let's talk about
So,
that. Does that mean one of those things was off?
yes, one or more or all. And that can be for people entertaining really serious illnesses, that can be hard to accept and even make people really angry and not want to hear this kind of discussion at all because it makes them feel guilty, like it's their fault.
Blame, right? That there's blame,
Right. And it's
shame.
really not meant to be that. It's more impersonal. If
Hmm.
you've been harboring a deep fear/belief that because your brother and your father and your sister all came down with a particular kind of cancer and they all died in their 30s, and you believe it's going to happen to you, it's very likely that it will happen to you because your beliefs are making it so.
So strong those beliefs are.
Yeah.
What about harboring anger and lack of forgiveness and betrayal and all of that? How much do those contribute to disease manifesting?
I think a lot, I think more than most people realize. Uh, the stronger the emotion, the more rapid the impact. But if you simply have a tendency to being sad, and that in your quiet moments when you're by yourself, you just tend to fall into sad thoughts of regret, or you've been badly done by, or life isn't fair, that you just dip into that easily. It's not a super strong emotion, right? But if it's constantly running in the background, what happens is that subtle energy body is being distorted.
Hmm.
It's being distorted. And that hologram can't manifest a healthy body, can't manifest the astral projection that is our physical body, a holographic projection, excuse me, that is our physical body, uh, as healthy as it could be because the hologram, the template, is distorted. So if you have these kind of distortions running a lot, what people begin to experience are mysterious breakdowns in cellular function.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So people get illnesses that science, modern medicine doesn't know how to cure. They can ameliorate. If you have diabetes, they can, you know, extend your life by having you on insulin for the rest of your life. But the problem is that your pancreas cells stopped producing insulin.
Right. Right.
So
There's
why?
functions in the body that just go completely awry.
Yes. And so that's the underlying problem with cancer. It's underlying problems with heart disease and scores of other diseases, is that you just have kind of a, in frequency terms, you just have this negative distorting vibration in your template, and then it is echoed in your physical body as particular breakdowns in particular types of cells.
Hmm. So, okay, so I have a question. Random question. Ready to go for this one? Let's just
Sure.
make this really interesting. So, I was at the gym the other day and I randomly broke a blood vessel in my finger. See how it's purple?
Yes.
Yes. So, I don't know how or why this happened, and it was just maybe because of a tight glove or something, and it's numb and it's still purple.
Yep.
And I didn't go to the hospital or anything because it's like it would be it's not broken, so x-rays wouldn't have helped. I did go to urgent care and they told me that. And I'm thinking, could I heal this myself right now spontaneously?
You probably could, in the full potential of yourself, but you would be able to heal anything if you were realizing that full potential. If you knew with utter certainty of your soul powers, your connection to spirit, and you could understand that you truly were believing deeply in unlimited powers of healing, you could. Now, would that be the first thing you'd want to do with those kind of powers, is, heal one finger? Or would it be better to apply them to deeper issues and healing more of the body?
There's
But
so much.
yes.
But wait, let's go into this for a sec because would I have to go to a mountaintop and be in the Himalayas to get connected with the spirit and the energy and everything in order to heal my finger, or could I do this right now?
If you had the strength of mind already, you could do it now. But getting that strength of mind takes time.
What would I
And
need?
well, for me, I always say that the one indispensable technique is meditation, because meditation puts you in touch with your soul nature. And
Mm,
it puts you in touch in a way that is unmistakably real, and that has what would I call it? An obvious benefit in your life. You feel it in more positive emotions. You feel it in greater relaxation, that it gives you that sort of tangible experience, although it's not technically tangible in the sense that it's touchable, but it is so real to you that you begin to doubt uh, other less uh, unlimited beliefs. You begin to leave those aside and realize, well, I'm not just the body, I'm more than the body. I'm not just molecules and atoms. I am this subtle energy that I can feel and experience. And as you get more practiced with meditation, you can move that subtle energy deliberately using breathing exercises or just with deliberate intention. You can move that energy within your body. And
Well,
as you do that,
go ahead.
what I see in almost universally is that people who can do that get sick less often. They, as Bernie Siegel put it in his book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles, said, happy people just don't get sick. That when you have that flow in your being, your body's healthy. It's all the cells are doing what they're supposed to do because they're supported by that strong flow of positive energy that is the
It's
result of all of these things.
interesting. You know, it's there's so much controversy around it. I mean, you are a practicing um Kriya yoga meditator for over 40 years. You have taught yoga. You are, as you mentioned, a member, you live at an intentional community. And Ananda, which I've interviewed, I interviewed Paramahansa Yogananda a long time ago. It was an
Well,
incredible experience. Um, your life is this. Sorry, Kriyananda. Um, what would I do as one who's not had that incredible experience? Um, believe in.
believe in yourself for starters. Believe that you are more than is obvious to you, more than just physical body and what you can perceive through the senses. But the main thing, I believe what I believe, not because I had the belief first, but because I had the experience. And I built on the experience in, at this point, tens of thousands of hours of meditation. But it didn't come all at once, but over
Okay.
time, it became more and more rock solid for me.
Mhm.
I have every conviction that I am more than just a physical body, that I am a soul. I've got a long way to go yet in what can be achieved. But I would say to anyone, I feel blessed and fortunate that I'm in a spiritual community where that practice is reinforced and encouraged.
Yep.
So
I just
for,
renamed your book to
you
how
just what?
I just renamed your book, How Emotion, Mind, Spirit, and Practice Enable Unlimited Self-Healing. Because that is, I think, the key is practice to believe. I mean, the belief comes with before or after the practice, but the practice has to happen. I think the consistent practice has to happen. Like you mentioned, the one with the MS had that beautiful consistency of prayer for
Right,
others.
which was very earnest and heartfelt and intense.
Hmm. The man with the lymphoma had the belief that this medication would help.
Yeah,
So,
somewhere in his life, and it's never identified, but somewhere in his life, he became strongly convinced in the power of medicine in general, chemotherapy in particular, so much so that, just believing it was going to cure him, cured him.
mhm. I've heard these, stories there. Joe Dispenza wrote a wonderful book about spontaneous healing, and
Mhm.
we've seen lots of evidence of this, but never has anyone attempted to break down the physics of it. And you have done that, which is really wonderful, which is a tough thing to do.
Well, I think that um, in our time, science is king.
It
People have
is.
a very hard time embracing anything that goes against what they think science is saying is true. But what most people don't realize is that physics, which is kind of the the alpha level of science supports rapid physical change. And it supports this idea that we have a hologram body. You have the leading scientist in M theory, Leonard Susskind, says just flat out that the entire physical universe, including people, planets, and everything in it, is a holographic projection from a pure energy realm. Just flat out says it. It's not, he doesn't beat around the bush. So M theory supports it. Now, most M theorists would say that I'm nuts for suggesting that this connects to spiritual teachings. But I know spiritual teachings well enough to see that the astonishing congruence between that principle, the holographic principle in physics, and healing and astral bodies and life after death, etc. It's an amazing congruence, an amazing coming together of science and spirituality. So in my book, I walk people through that step by step with the intention that at the end of the physics part, they can go, I get it. I had a good friend who read the book. You may know her, Sandy Sedgbeer. She's the host for Om Times in London, based out of London. She read the book, and her endorsement started off with, Louise Hay told us that we could heal ourselves. Joseph Selbie made me believe it was possible.
By
And the
combining the
belief is
physics.
based in the science.
So you're not a physicist, but you're a researcher of physics and meditation and spirituality and belief, and that puts it all together. I think a physicist would just have a myopic view of just the physics of it. Without the belief, it doesn't really, it exists in a silo, right?
Right. Just knowing that the physical universe is a holographic projection is not enough to make all the connections you need to make to your soul powers and to your subtle energy body. But that's where we can turn to spirituality and the universal spiritual teachings that are common to pretty much every experiential tradition around the world. And they're all based on, don't just believe some set of tenets. Meditate, experience it, pray.
So when you're meditating and praying and experiencing, are you visualizing specific wholeness? Or like with my fingers, what should I do? Should I visualize my finger returning to complete normalcy?
It would help it along. It would help it along. I think I would first suggest that you ask yourself, do you have an emotional charge around this? Are you neutral? Are you positive in general? Just do you need to just raise your energy in your emotions in general? If that's not the case, then by all means, visualize it. You may not wake up tomorrow and it's gone, but you could accelerate the healing.
I'm willing to do that. I am willing to do that. Yes. Because I don't know quite else what to do other than just to wait it out. Or I could go down all of the testing and all of the MRIs and all of that to see if there's a blockage there, which is, according to what you're saying, I can holographically visualize this to be completely healed.
You could, but do you have to have a singularly powerful mind for that to have the change you are hoping it to have? You can help it along.
Okay.
But again, remember, those powers aren't just yours. You're in this sea of infinite intelligent consciousness, and you're borrowing. You're using some of those powers, but those powers are working for you whether you focus them or not.
I'm truly in the inquiry. I mean, I'm asking. I'm
Yeah.
asking because I want to make sure that I'm responsible in saying you can't just, many do, but you have to have all of these different belief and the holographic concept around healing and the research that you've done on this and 40 years of meditation practice. I mean, there's a lot more to it. And I
But
think
I
that
would
it's
really
responsible. Yeah.
earnestly say you don't need all of that. I am blessed and I have a wonderful life, and um, I hope to continue to have this wonderful life, not just because it might help me in healing, but it makes me feel joyful, makes me feel happy, increases my concentration, my creativity, many reasons to do it. But mainly what I'm hoping to convey is if you even do a little bit of meditation, even a little bit of trying to awaken positive emotions and connect to spirit, it will improve your health. You may not see it dramatically. And I really urge no one to expect that they're going to be healed of an extraordinarily serious illness in, no time at all.
Hmm.
All of those people who have those kind of experiences had some extraordinary degree of belief or focus. And how they got there could have taken them all their lives, right?
Right. And then there's those that didn't heal. There's those that didn't
Yeah,
make it.
yeah.
So,
But anybody who tries it a little bit is going to be benefited. The more you take control of your health, the greater the benefit.
there's no downside,
There's
basically.
no downside.
Yes. Um, it could improve the quality of your life in some way. Your mindset, your relationships, your whatever it is, it can improve this elevated sense of well-being
Yeah, and it's not, I think it
is the
also is
byproduct.
important to say that you're not doing something that is happening to you. You're just awakening to what you really are. And meditation is simply a way of getting past the usual way in which our thoughts run and our feelings run and our awareness of the physical body, and allows us to become aware that we're so much more. And as you become more aware of it, you realize if anyone is doing anything, you're limiting yourself rather than needing these things to make you more than you already are. You already are that. You just need to become aware of it.
I love that you said that we are awakening to what we already are. The body has this innate ability to heal itself. It has a constant desire to regenerate. That's its default mode, right? So if that's built into the mechanism of who we are, then we could touch and tap into that innate ability to heal ourselves and assist the body along in that default mode of regeneration. And I think
Yes.
our thoughts can definitely help with that. And thank you so much. I mean, this is a spirited conversation. I hope my finger gets better. And I appreciate you and your awareness that you brought us through this conversation. Thank you, Joseph.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to share what I think are really valuable truths for people.
I appreciate that. Yes, again. My guest is Joseph Selbie, and you can look up his book anywhere. It's called The Physics of Miraculous Healing. It's just a great title. And I appreciate everything that you shared. And again, if you want to listen to this on our podcast, share it with a friend, you can do that by going anywhere you listen to your podcast. Just look up The Aware Show, and you'll see our interview there, and you can share it with your friends from there. Sharing's caring. That's the whole reason we do these interviews. All right. Thank you again, Joseph. And thank you so much for everyone listening. And thank you, Gina Salvati, for producing. And until next time, I invite you all to stay aware.